Hi, I'm Tina Trevino with Latin Biz Today. As small businesses continue to face the challenges of the COVID-19 health crisis, Latin Biz Today and Popular Bank have partnered up to bring you Driving Success Through the Pandemic, a 9-part virtual discussion series addressing some of the most pressing issues facing small businesses today. Popular Bank's Chief Operating Officer, Manuel Chinea, and Latin Biz Today Advisory Board member Elias Mendoza are sitting down to share their industry insights tackling some of the challenges, opportunities, and best practices small businesses and entrepreneurs face during this unique time. In this segment of Driving Success Through the Pandemic, we'll be discussing small business agility and adaptability amid the ongoing economic disruption caused by the pandemic. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the conversation.
Welcome to the Latin Business Today, Driving Business Success Through the Pandemic discussion series. My name is Elias Mendoza. I'm an advisor to Latin Business Today and a partner and COO at Cirrus Capital.
And my name is Manuel Chinea, Chief Operating Officer of Popular Bank.
So driving business success through the pandemic is a multi-part discussion that tackles the challenges and opportunities facing small businesses amid the COVID-19 health crisis. Today, we're going to discuss a couple of continuing strategies for businesses and what they'll need in order to adapt, survive, and thrive amid the economic volatility and uncertainty of the current situation and beyond. Our first discussion topic is around the importance of small business agility and adaptability amid the ongoing disruption.
Thank you. I think that this is a very important topic. There's few developments, some are negative and some are very positive. Obviously, as most people know, the increase of positive cases seems to be spiking across all the different regions in the country. So we've already exceeded the original spikes in the spring, as well as the second spike in the summer. And it is clear that we're headed into what you might refer to as a dark winter. But on the other hand, there's been a couple of very, very positive developments. I think most people know by now that there's already been the announcement of 2 highly effective vaccines with efficacy rates of north of 94, 95%, which is unheard of and really encouraging. Already these companies are applying to begin the distribution of these vaccines. That is a really positive development because it kind of shows the light at the end of the tunnel. So from that perspective, talking about the ability to hang in there is super important because there is now, at least we know that the recovery is coming. There is this vaccine that is going to come and going to start being distributed and will eventually allow us to reopen the economy and kind of reopen business and normalize business. I think that the challenge here and what we want to talk about a little bit more is we know it's going to get a little worse before it gets better for the next 3 to 4 months. And the issue is, what can small businesses do to try to continue to adapt and adjust and stay and hang in there for the next 3 to 4 months until the economy starts reopening. The reality is that I can say that I think we all feel that way. We've been cooped up for the most part in our homes for the better part of 9 months, and it'll be probably 12 months by the time we start seeing some level of normalization. And the reality is that I think that there's a thirst by most individuals to finally go out there and start going to restaurants, start going shopping and browsing in stores. So there will be a very likely increase in demand for the entertainment business or the retail business. And that the key here is if these businesses can hang on for the next 3-4 months, I think that there will be a turnaround and an uptick, a material uptick in demand for their goods and services in a very short period of time. The key is hanging in there for the next 3-4 months, and what can businesses do to do that?
Yeah.
I think with the elections behind us, we are also hopeful that there is new legislation that can be passed, be it during the lame duck session or at the beginning of the new administration, that will perhaps even most likely include a 4th round of PPP loans that most likely will allow, the discussions are that could allow for people to get a second, those that have been and can prove that their business or revenues have been materially impacted, that could
Mhm.
actually request and apply for a second application of funding for their business. And that's also could be a very positive development for most businesses that are suffering through the pandemic. I
Yeah.
don't know if you have some thoughts on that, Eli.
Well, no, I mean, those are great points about perhaps us turning the corner, right, with the news that's coming out with respect to the pandemic and treatments and so on. Look, no doubt businesses have had to adapt, right, to, in your words, right, kind of deal with the short term. And it's been, I think, pretty amazing to watch businesses come up with new ideas in the short term to service clients or to continue to stay in business, stay relevant. So you think about delivery, you think about contactless payment, you think about people, right, restaurants or places putting up barriers, social distancing, signage, and thinking up of new ways that they could make things more convenient to a customer. So hopefully those ideas will serve people, will serve businesses well in the short term. But it's also smart because I think there will be a behavioral change. I think you're right that folks are hungry to get back to restaurants and they're hungry for more face-to-face social interaction, perhaps, and to dealing with people more on a human basis as opposed to a Zoom basis. But some of the things that are getting rolled out today to deal with the pandemic, I think are going to stick around for a while, right? They're conveniences that people are going to get used to and they're going to take advantage of. And so businesses that are starting to address the short-term pandemic customer requirements are setting themselves up pretty nicely, right, for the future. Of course, it takes a lot of agility to be able to do that. I think, first of all, you have to understand what it is the customers would want and how they want it, right? So being aware, listening to the market, listening to customers is pretty important. Coming up with the ideas to address those issues or address those requirements is pretty important. But then there's the whole execution. There's the how do you then get that done? And I think, everything from retraining to retooling, changing your business model, changing your revenue model, making some investments in technology, all of these things have to get done. And so small businesses, right, are pretty busy individuals and leaders trying to, make sure that all of their ideas are executed. And we've seen that, I think, kind of play out over the course of the last 9 to 10 months with some pretty creative stuff that, again, I think sets people up nicely for the future of what convenience might look like or what new services might look like. Your point is a good one, though, about financing. So all of this takes, time, attention, resources, money, maybe additional resources, maybe retrained workers. All of that, I think, needs to get done in the context of what might be available with respect to financing. And so that's where PPP and other programs, right, could come in, and perhaps equity or other forms of perhaps non-government financing are starting to take an interest in these post-pandemic business models and maybe are beginning to make investments or take some more risks today than they were at the beginning of the pandemic to help people come up and execute with these creative ideas.
You bring up a number of really good points, Eli. As it relates to the issue of digital capabilities and service capabilities, that's critical. I think that yes, people are hungry to go back to some semblance of normalcy and go out to restaurants and go out shopping in person, and that longing for experiential environment where you're in person. I think it's going to be there, but by the same token, as you said, they also grew very used to the convenience of doing a number of things in a very seamless way. And
Yeah.
they are not going to be willing to go back to things that don't make sense for them anymore.
Yeah.
They're getting used to, ability to order things online and very easily knowing that their stuff is going to be waiting for them at the store and they just go there and picking up. that the ability to make transactions in things
Yeah.
online, the ability to not be able to do transactions without having to necessarily contactless transactions without necessarily having to pass things back and forth between the cashier and themselves, self-checkout counters that I don't even have to interact and I can do it myself. So I think those are things that are very critical. And I think that any investment any small business does in building those digital capabilities and those distribution and service capabilities are not going to waste. Instead, I mean, these are things that they will continue to leverage going forward. The other point that it was very critical point that relates to financing and the ability to hang in there. I think I am in a bank, and as a banker, the most recent announcements about the vaccine give banks a lot more confidence about betting on the future. It's a lot more difficult as a financial institution to continue to extend credit if you see no end in sight to this whole situation of the quarantine. It increasingly becomes the banks by default start tightening their underwriting and becoming more and more restrictive and in terms of who do they lend money, because at the end of the day, as a bank, you need to make sure that the person you're lending money is going to be around to repay that money. So I think that the announcement of the vaccines is great also because it provides that level of confidence to the banks that they know, hey, this business can, hang in there for another 3-4 months. They're going to be on the upswing of things, and they're going to be able to be around and be able to repay the debt. So it's also a good positive development that will also in turn help businesses secure financing outside government guarantee programs.
Those are great points. And I think your point around vaccines and other progress towards putting a little bit more certainty that there's finality, let's say, to a outright lockdown situation, and at least a semblance of improvement should, make it easier again for both lending institutions as well as for equity providers, to get a little bit more comfortable and to assess the risk a little bit better, and as such lean into these initiatives. And I think they themselves are starting to understand what you just articulated, with respect to the fact that digital upgrades, new ways of doing things are actually good for businesses long term. And so, those are silver linings coming out of the pandemic that will be requirements, in the future. So folks that can, astutely put that together and figure out a way, again, of continuing the business in the short term. And there's been some really creative ways, that people have done that. I mean, you read about these examples about folks, switching manufacturing plants to make Purell, or to make something that's related to health and hygiene, or shirt makers and small tailors or textile folks making masks, So whatever it takes to get through the short term and making investments for the long term, I think is certainly something that will bode well for future, business opportunities for folks.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it in the first topics that we cover some time ago. In our industry, banks, I mean, we used to require wet signatures for everything. So you had to come in and sign in person and whatnot. And obviously the pandemic started and we had to scramble and had to overcome that reluctance to do and execute things digitally, legal documents digitally. And now we've done it, and we've done it for the past 9 months. I can guarantee you no customer wants to go back to now having to come in to the bank to sign things in person when for the past 9 months they've been executing legal documents electronically. That's a very good example that is obviously very near and dear to us that's happened. And I think it's one of the silver linings that it forced a lot of organizations, institutions to overcome some of the fears they had about adopting some of these more novel ways of delivering services. You've seen it also in medical practices that there had been a long-standing reluctance for doctors to do any type of consultation via a virtual or discussion. They forced you to go and stand in line, or not stand in line, but wait in the waiting room for a period of time to see the doctor in person. And the reality is that there is a number of circumstances that should allow for that virtual consultation without requiring someone to go in person. So I think that those are just a couple of examples of things that We're forced by the pandemic. And I think to your point, once things normalize, a lot of people won't want to go back to the old way of doing things.
Yeah.
And rightly so.
I mean, I think we both agree, right? The short-term adaptability, creativity, and just scrappiness that businesses have, right, is great. It kind of buys survival in the short term, but as you take a step back and you think about those things that you also need to do that could be opportunities today, but set you up nicely in the future, I think we're going to see a lot of really cool stuff, right, come out of this pandemic. Thought about in the pandemic, execute in the pandemic, and living well after that, and perhaps driving a new generation of business model or just a new service. And to the extent that the environment is more stable, back to your original point around things are starting to look a little bit better, the more opportunity perhaps to approach and to line up the necessary financing to make the appropriate investments for the future.